The Ohio State Buckeyes are your 2024-25 college football playoff national champions. And despite a late push by Notre Dame, the Buckeyes were well in control of this game for the most part. And while the result itself wasn't too surprising, as per CBS Sports, the Buckeyes were favored by 9 going into this game. With the trajectory of college football as a whole, especially in regards to some conferences, this win by Ohio State was kind of a shock to the system of college football, and there's a possibility for some major implications alongside it. Welcome back to State of B Association. I'm your host, Nash Roberts, and today we are talking about just that. First off, though, I want to take a very quick moment to stop and appreciate the season that the Fighting Irish had. Because, of course, history remembers the victors, and even now, most media outlets are going to be talking about Ohio State, and rightfully so. But it was an incredible season for Notre Dame. Their defense, especially throughout most of the year, was very impressive. And I think their head coach in Marcus Freeman is a great head coach. And you look at a guy like Deion Sanders in Colorado, they had a great season this year, but in his first year, they won, I believe, 4 games. But what Deion did there was he kind of set the culture. And we really saw the results of that this year with them being a much better team. And with Marcus Freeman, I think it's very much the same way how a great head coach can create a culture for a team. Because Notre Dame is historically a great college football franchise, anyways, a very iconic one to say the very least. But sometimes there can maybe be a hesitancy to go there for athletes because they're a rigorous academic school. And as a result of that, so many athletes, especially with the new NIL, they want to focus on, just playing on the field. So that can kind of be create a hesitancy for someone to go to Notre Dame. But when you've got a great head coach there that you can tell is going to be able to maximize talent and led this team to a 14-1 record until they lost in the national championship, I think having Marcus Freeman there is going to be a big draw for people to go to Notre Dame. And they've had good recruiting classes anyways, and I think that's just kind of a show of that. He's really going to set the culture there, in my opinion. The first drive, especially, was a beauty that was well orchestrated by the Fighting Irish. It was long, drawn out, and they were able to use their quarterback in not just through the air attacks, but on the ground as well. And it was very effective and showed some of the best that they can do as a gritty football team. So I just want to take a moment there to appreciate Marcus Freeman, the great job he's done over at Notre Dame. But on to our winners, and that is the Ohio State Buckeyes. First of all, of course, shout out to Jeremiah Smith. He is a stud, All-American second team, according to AP, and he's doing this as a freshman. So he's doing this at just 19 years old. And there's guys, who stick around in college for 6 years now. Smith looks like he's going to be a guy that is 3 years in, and then he declares to the draft, and he is a first-round pick. Absolutely, that is my projection for him, and I don't think that's a bold take whatsoever. This guy is uber talented, and up until the final moments of that game, he had 4 receptions for 32 yards, and it wasn't the best showing, but then he had a game-sealing reception that took Ohio State all the way down to the red zone, and that really sealed the game for the Buckeyes. So even when he had somewhat of a quiet game, box score wise for most of it, he was still able to impact the game at a high level. And even if he hadn't had that one play, I think there's definitely a fact that just having a threat like him, even if he's not doing much in the game, can kind of draw a lot of defensive attention on him. We see teams in the NFL use decoys all the time, use their star wide receiver to open up opportunities for other guys because defense is just so keyed in on one guy. And we even saw that in this game, like on that fifth reception that sealed the game for Ohio State. Was the play call that Notre Dame had the best? No, not so ever. They were pretty much all out blitzing on a third and long situation. But the one man that was on Jeremiah Smith, he pointed out to the defense and let them know that he thinks the ball was going his way. And it did. There was just nothing that team could do to stop it. And I think that is truly the mark of a great wide receiver. And he has had a very impressive season. Now, for their quarterback, the man delivering the ball to Jeremiah Smith, what a story it's been for Will Howard. 4,000 yards, 35 touchdowns. Per ESPN, he had the best quarterback rating in the entirety of college football this year. and he completed over 80% of his passes in this game. What I noticed is that he looked really, really confident. And confidence is so important for a quarterback. You want to look at an example from this season. Look at Jackson Arnold over for the Oklahoma Sooners. This was a very highly touted prospect, perceived as the best quarterback in his recruiting class. He sits behind a great college quarterback in Dylan Gabriel for 1 year to just kind of be able to learn behind a really good quarterback who was a Heisman candidate this year. And in year two, that's going to be his opportunity to start and define himself for his Oklahoma team and kind of be the next great quarterback, is what he was thought of going into this year. Because they had a very impressive 3 year stretch there where it was Baker Mayfield, Kyler Murray, then Jalen Hurts. But now it was time for Jackson Arnold to step up. And as the year went on, and especially exemplified by his benching for Mike Hawkins Jr., we really saw that Jackson Arnold had kind of lost that confidence. And when he lost that confidence, he might hold on to the ball a little bit too long, or you might do the opposite. You might go and make risky throws, and he was really turnover prone because he always kind of felt like he was really worried about not making the right play, and sometimes you just have the confidence to go out there and throw it. And instead, he had fumbles, he had interceptions, and you could tell very well by his play on the field and his body language that he was not confident in his abilities whatsoever. Now he's gone from Oklahoma. So I think that shows how confidence is a huge factor. But in this game, Will Howard, number 18, looked very, very confident for the Ohio State Buckeyes. And I love to see that because it's something that is so important for a quarterback. Yes, there is a factor of being safe with the ball, of course, but you've got to know when to air it out. And that's exactly what he did this game. I keep going back to that game sealing catch by Jeremiah Smith, but once again, that's a situation where the Buckeyes had just ran two straight quarterback runs, designated run plays for the QB on first and second down. And now they're in a third and long situation because Notre Dame was able to put that to a halt. And on third down, you're going to need a quarterback that's going to be able to read the field quickly and have the confidence to air it out to the best wide receiver on the field. And that's exactly what he did, and they executed it perfectly. And that really won the game for the Buckeyes. But now that I've talked about, just the way that the manner in which Ohio State got this done, as well as the impressive season has been, although a disappointing loss here for Notre Dame, let's talk about the main point here, and that is how Ohio State shocked the system. And it really has to do with the conference that they're in, as well as their AP ranking at the end of the year. Because, of course, they were perceived as a top 12 team in the nation to even make the college football playoffs. But as the years have gone by now, we've kind of seen the emergence of super conferences in a way in college football. And that's really been exemplified by the abandonment of the Pac 12, as well as Texas and Oklahoma going to the SEC. Because now, really, the SEC, it's always been seen as the best conference in college football, the place where the top teams are. But in recent years, especially with NIL money, it's kind of been formed as a super conference in a way, where if you're going to be the best football team in the nation and get recognition for that, you have to be an SEC team. Oklahoma and Texas went there for the money and to challenge themselves and prove that they are college football blue bloods. Because being in the Big 12, that's perceived as a weaker conference. So in moving to the SEC, you kind of have a chance to prove yourself more often. And we see it in the AP rankings as well. An SEC team with 2 losses might be higher ranked than a team in another conference that has 1 or even no losses, because they perceive an SEC strength of schedule as simply more difficult, and therefore a team has more leeway for a couple losses if they're in the Southeast Conference. But one thing about Ohio State, they're not in that SEC. They are Big Ten through and through, and same thing for Notre Dame. Both teams in the national championship. Notre Dame's an independent team, and these were the two teams that by the end of the year were the best two in college football. And it ends with someone from the Big Ten hoisting up that trophy. And I think that's huge because if the SEC was seen as the only conference that's really worth paying attention to, and the only conference where the true top teams are coming from, then it's going to be great for every team in there. They're going to be living. They're going to have all the money in the world, all the revenue from TV deals, and therefore also all the NIL money for players coming in to draw in top recruits. So a push back to have two teams like Ohio State and Notre Dame in the championship that are not in that conference. And even Oregon, who had a great regular season but lost to Ohio State, same thing for them not being in the SEC. That is huge because you fight back against any potential monopolization of college football in the SEC, because monopolies thrive when they are able to extract any competition. So by fighting back and showing what your team can do and how you are the best team in the entire nation, despite not being seen as being in the best conference in the nation, you push back against that and you allow more money to come into your program, more attention to go to your program. And as a result, that allows you to stay on par and recruit top level players, especially with the rise in NIL. And you're still able to compete with this juggernaut of a conference that is looking to monopolize and become a super conference in college football. You fight back against that. And I think that's huge and something I really admire both teams for making the national championship and for Ohio State and winning it. And that is, in my opinion, how they shocked the system in a way by fighting back, by not being this super conference team, but instead one that has had a great culture for so many years now. I mean, we talked about Jeremiah Smith earlier. Just think about all the great wide receivers that have gone through Ohio State, especially in recent years. It's a very long list and a very talented list. And for them to win the national championship in 2025 with SEC bias seemingly more prominent than ever, especially with Texas and Oklahoma going over there, I think that's incredible. And so I give the Buckeyes all the flowers in the world for that. And that's all for today's episode of State of the Association. I'm your host, Nash Roberts. Thank you for listening. Not my favorite episode, but I definitely wanted to get one out here talking about the national championship. Thank you. Also, I gotta get a microphone pop cover. It was really bothering me because I would go back on this episode and I would listen to something like the introduction there and just kind of make sure I'm flowing all right and don't have to necessarily redo it. But when I would do it, my my microphone, I would hear it in the audio. It would just pop on P's especially. So I've got to get a mic cover for that. But as of now, thank you for listening. This has been State of the Association. I'm host Nash Roberts. We'll be back with NBA content soon, probably tomorrow.